Hello, teacher, and maybe the class. Today I will talk about recognizing arguments, which is the second chapter of the critical thinking book. As we saw in the last chapter, the main focus of critical thinking is on reasons, finding reasons, assessing reasons, and providing reasons. Arguments are texts that provide support for a claim in critical thinking. We examine the idea of argument in this chapter, as well as how to tell an argument from a non-argument. What is an argument? An argument is a claim defended with reasons consisting of one or more premises and a conclusion. A statement is a sentence that can be viewed as either true or false. Examples of statements include red is a color, Canada is in South Africa, God does not exist, and abortion is morally wrong. Statements can be used to express multiple statements, such as roses are red and violets are blue, with mortgage interest rates at 30-year lows. Let's go to Paris for our anniversary, and oh my goodness. Not all sentences are statements, as they either assert or deny that something is the case. Statements can also be about subjective matters of personal experience or objectively verifiable matters of fact. Some sentences that look like non-statements are actually statements and can be used in arguments. For example, Elisa, you should quit smoking and do not read beauty magazines. These examples demonstrate that a rhetorical question can be understood as a statement, while an oath imperative is a sentence that has the form of an imperative or command, but is intended to assert a value judgment about what is good or bad or right or wrong. Imperative sentences are not statements if they are intended as orders, suggestions, proposals, or exhortations, but they are statements if they are intended as pieces of advice or value judgments about what someone ought or ought not to do. Identifying premises and conclusions. Indicator words are words or phrases that provide clues that premises or conclusions are being put forward. Premise indicators indicate that premises are being offered, while conclusion indicators indicate that conclusions are being offered. Common premise indicators include since, because, for, given that, sinning that, considering that, and inasmuch as, in view of the fact that. Examples of premise indicators include having fun can be the spice of life, but not its main course. Effective reasoning requires reliable information, and women are not to blame when they reject the rules of life. Conclusion indicators include therefore, thus, consequently, so, according to, for, that, which shows that, wherefore. This implies that, as a result, this suggests that, being so. Understanding arguments will be easier if the expressions were used on signal premises or conclusions. However, many arguments contain no indicator words, making it important to consider the context when determining the meaning of an expression. To find the conclusion of an argument when the argument contains no indicator words, tips include finding the main issue, looking at the beginning or end of the passage, asking what the writer or speaker is trying to prove, putting the forward, therefore, before one of the statements, and using the because trick. What is not an argument? Arguments are common in daily life, including school, work, and political discussions. Language is used for various purposes, including jokes, singing, poetry, and giving orders. To distinguish between arguments and non-arguments, a simple test is used. If a statement consists of two or more statements, and one of them is supported by the others, it is considered an argument. Reports. A report aims to convey information about a subject, such as demographics, economics, culture, and society during the last quarter of the 20th century. The report discusses changes in the nation's demographics, urban corridors, and HTs, as well as the growth of globalized industries and a post-industrial economy. However, caution is needed when reporting arguments, as the author is merely reporting another person's argument without endorsing or presenting it as their own. Unsupported assertions. Unsupported assertions are statements about a speaker's beliefs, which are part of arguments only if they support other claims. For example, the speaker believes that people fear something more unsettling than dying, such as never having lived. This is not an argument, as it does not follow from or imply other statements. Conditional statements. A conditional statement is an if-then statement consisting of two parts, the antecedent and the consequent. They can be part of arguments, such as if certainly fails critical thinking and is placed on academic probation. However, they are not arguments, as there is no claim that any statement follows from any part of conditional statements. Some conditional statements involve a process of reasoning, but no single claim but itself, every argument. Although conditional statements are not arguments, they can be part of arguments, such as if certainly scores on a play and has a bad case of indication. Chain arguments, where the antecedent of the first statement is linked to the consequence of the last statement by a chain of intervening conditional statements, are another example of conditional statements. Illustrations. Illustrations are used to provide examples of a claim, rather than to prove or support it. They are often used in conjunction with arguments, such as many white flowers are edible, or many of the world's greatest philosophers were bachelors. Distinguishing between illustrations and arguments can be challenging due to the presence of phrases like, for example, and for instance, in arguments, and the fine line between illustrating a claim and providing sufficient evidence. The principle of charity, which can be applied to these days, can help resolve these issues quickly and easily. Explanations. The two statements Titanic sank because it struck an iceberg and capital punishment should be abolished because innocent people may be mistakenly executed are both explanations, but they differ in their purpose. An explanation aims to explain why something is the case, not to prove it. In everyday speech, we often use argument and explanation almost interchangeably, but it is important to distinguish them because the standards for evaluating them are quite different. To distinguish between arguments and explanations, four basic tests are used: the common knowledge test, the past-event test, the author's intent test, and the principle of charity test. These tests are not foolproof, but they help distinguish between explanations and arguments. For example, all men are mortal, and Socrates is a man. Therefore, Socrates is mortal. Is a matter of common knowledge, while capital punishment should be abolished because innocent people may be mistakenly executed, is an argument. Critical thinking is a skill that helps us understand complex and messy situations. It helps us evaluate a passage by examining various possibilities and determining whether it is an argument or explanation. It helps us think intelligently about life and helps us evaluate a passage based on its intended meaning. These are what I want to tell you today. Thank you for listening to me.